Some warriors are loud, others are ghosts. At Falcon Ridge Air Base, everyone knew the loud ones, the brash pilots who swaggered into the officers' club, stacking flight hours like poker chips, retelling stories of turbulence and near misses over beer and laughter. But Lieutenant Arya Chen didn't belong to their tribe. While others drank and bragged, she sat alone in her quarters, flipping through flight manuals until her eyes burned, running emergency procedures in the simulator again and again. 29 years old. 2,300 hours in the cockpit. She had become a master of low-altitude flying so precise that the ground crews called her by a name whispered with respect. Ghost Falcon. She wasn't just a pilot. She was the daughter of sacrifice. Her father, an immigrant engineer from Taiwan, had spent decades designing aircraft components no one outside the hangars would ever praise. Her mother, an army nurse, carried stories of blood-stained bandages and soldiers who never came home. Together, they forged a daughter who understood that heroism wasn't medals or headlines, it was silent duty, repeated day after day, with no applause. Before we continue, this is Stories Unseen, the channel that brings hidden military legends to life. Sound off in the comments where are you watching from, and soldier hit subscribe. Join the unit at the Naval Academy. That silence made her an easy target. Instructors doubted her place in combat. Classmates laughed that a woman her size could never carry the weight of war. She didn't answer back. She simply arrived before dawn, stayed long after dark, and turned every slight into fuel. Where others sought recognition, she built discipline, and when emergencies erupted in training flights, she was the one who stayed calm, made the right call, and brought the aircraft home safe, but graduation gave her no combat role. Instead, she was tucked into a support squadron, ferrying supplies, flying patrols, watching her skills rust behind routine. It gnawed at her. She knew she was capable of more, but she never complained. Instead, she volunteered for every extra course the Navy would offer: combat maneuvering, hostile navigation, survival evasion. She spent evenings in hangars with ground crews, talking about fuel flow and engine performance until she knew every bolt of the OV-10 Bronco better than most mechanics. That bond with the crews paid off. When they whispered Ghost Falcon's taking her bird up, mechanics straightened with pride, because they trusted her in ways they didn't trust others. She treated them as partners, not subordinates, and they, in return, swore her aircraft would never fail her. On quiet evenings, Arya walked the runway alone, fingers brushing the cold fuselage. She'd whisper to herself one day, "The Navy will test me, and I'll be ready." Then she'd stand under the Nevada stars, picturing valleys she'd never flown, enemies she'd never faced, and a mission that seemed like a phantom dream. Her personal life Spartan. A single apartment off base, shelves of aviation books, model jets she'd built as a child, letters from parents who worried but never doubted. She didn't gossip, didn't waste time proving herself with words. She believed her flying would speak when the moment came. And that morning began like all the others' pre-dawn run, sweat cooling in the desert wind. Checklist review, preparation for a mission too simple to matter. Somewhere on the base, SEAL teams trained with their usual ferocity, but Arya barely noticed. Her focus was a routine patrol over open sky. What she didn't know, what no one could know, was that within hours, the calm she had built her life around would shatter. The alarms at Falcon Ridge would scream, the SEALs would fall silent, and a single question would rise above the chaos: is there a combat pilot here? And the ghost who always stayed quiet would finally be called to stand. The morning calm of Falcon Ridge shattered with a sound no one mistook: the base-wide emergency alarm. Pilots froze mid-step, crew chiefs dropped their tools, and the desert air filled with a rising wail that clawed at every soldier's nerves. Lieutenant Arya Chen was bent over the wing of her OV-10 Bronco when the voice thundered from the loudspeakers urgent. Sharp, nothing like routine drills. All available personnel to the main briefing hall, immediately. Arya secured her tools with trembling hands and sprinted across the tarmac, boots pounding the concrete. She had never heard such weight in a commander's tone, and somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't an exercise. The briefing hall overflowed within minutes, sailors, Marines, aviators shoulder to shoulder, the low murmur of speculation dying into silence when Captain Daniel Ironclad Reeves, SEAL Team Commander, stepped forward. His face, usually stone, looked carved from strain. Even his hands that had broken down doors on 3 continents shook slightly as he spread classified documents across the podium. A satellite image flashed on the screen. Jagged mountains, dense pine forests, a small scar of wreckage barely visible in a clearing. Reeves's voice cut through the room, steady but raw. 2 hours ago, a UH-60 Black Hawk went down 80 kilometers beyond the line. 5 signal specialists survived the crash. They are alive, but trapped. Enemy patrols are closing in. And make no mistake, those men will be captured or killed if we don't reach them fast. The air in the hall thickened. Reeves pointed to the mapped narrow valleys, ridgelines bristling with red symbols. Insurgent forces have Zu-23 anti-aircraft guns dug into the high ground. Igla-1 man pads reported along the valley. Weather's turning low clouds, gusting crosswinds. Conventional rescue birds can't get close. Ground teams can't reach them in time. That leaves us one option: an aircraft small enough, agile enough, to fly nap of the earth through this canyon system. A hum rippled through the room. Everyone knew what he was asking without saying it. Reeves' voice hardened. This mission requires a pilot who can fly lower than radar, tighter than training ever demanded, someone who can think tactically, anticipate ground fire, and guide my SEALs to those survivors. If we fail, those 5 men die, and the enemy walks away with their intel. Dozens of pilots sat straighter, some with thousands of hours logged, some with combat ribbons pinned to their chests. Yet no one spoke. Arya felt her pulse slam against her ribs as she scanned their faces. Men who once mocked her in the mess hall now avoided her eyes. She saw fear in their silence. Her mind flashed images her father bent over blueprints, her mother tying bandages in a tent hospital, her own nights tracing terrain maps by lamplight. This was the test she had whispered about on the runway. Reeves let the silence stretch until it cut like barbed wire. Then he leaned forward, voice low, deliberate, inescapable. I need to know right now, is there a combat pilot in this room? The words echoed against steel walls. Breath held, hearts hammered. Every man waited for someone else to rise. Arya pushed back her chair. The screech of metal legs on concrete silenced even the whispers. She stood, not tall, not broad, not boasting but steady. Every eye locked on her, weighing her frame, doubting her strength, questioning her courage. And yet she didn't flinch. She met Reeves's gaze, and, for the first time, the ghost stepped into the light. Every eye in the room locked on Lieutenant Arya Chen. She felt the weight of dozens of stares pressing against her frame, some skeptical, some hostile, a few curious. Whispers rippled through the crowd, slicing at her like small blades. Too young. No combat time. Ghost Falcon's good in training. But this, at the podium, Captain Daniel Ironclad Reeves studied her with measured calm. He had never flown with her, but he had heard the ground crews speak her name with respect. In special operations, reputation mattered. And Arya's was a quiet one, precise, disciplined, reliable. Reeves leaned forward, his voice gravel and steel. Lieutenant Chen, he said, do you fully understand what this mission demands? The words were not an invitation, they were a gauntlet thrown in front of the entire hall. Colonel Victor Stroud, the base commander, cut in before she could answer. His tone carried authority but also doubt. Lieutenant, 5 men's lives hang in the balance. We're asking someone to fly nap of the Earth, under radar, through mountains guarded by Igla missiles. This isn't a simulator. This is life and death." The room held its breath. Arya lifted her chin, voice steady. "Sir, I have logged over 2,300 flight hours, most of them in low-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. I've completed advanced combat maneuvering and hostile terrain navigation courses. I know the risks. I know the aircraft. And I know I can execute this mission successfully." Her words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Determination threaded through every syllable. Even skeptics could feel it. Reeves's eyes narrowed, testing not just what she said, but how she stood. He had seen bravado before young men with loud confidence and empty skill. This wasn't that. There was no boast in Arya Chen, only conviction. Still, Reeves pressed, "Lieutenant, you'll be flying alone into airspace already proven hostile. The weather is closing in. Visibility will be brutal. You'll be dancing on the edge of stall speed while threading canyons filled with anti-aircraft fire. Are you absolutely certain?" Arya's heart pounded. But she didn't hesitate. "Captain, those 5 survivors are counting on someone. I've studied Iron Veil Range's terrain maps, and I understand the Bronco's flight profile better than anyone here. I won't promise it's safe, but I can promise I'm ready." The hall erupted in murmurs. Major Elias Doyle, a decorated pilot with 4 combat tours, stood abruptly. "Sir, I volunteer. I've got more flight hours, more combat experience, and I'm not willing to risk this mission on someone who hasn't been shot at before." Gasps cut through the air. Some nodded in agreement. Others leaned forward, curious to see how Reeves would decide. Reeves raised his hand, silencing the room. His expression hardened. "We don't have time for politics. I'll decide based on who gives us the best chance." He turned to Arya. "Lieutenant Chen, walk me through your tactical plan." Arya stepped forward, eyes locking on the glowing satellite images. She traced a ridgeline with her finger, her voice calm but sharp with precision. "I'd approach from the northwest, using this spine to mask from radar. Prevailing winds out of the west will give me lift and improve fuel efficiency. This valley she tapped has heavy tree cover. I can stay under 200 feet, undetected, until I hit the crash site. Survivors will use the PRC-112 survival radio. I'll establish contact here." The officers leaned in. She didn't stop. "Contingencies if weather closes. I divert south through this canyon, safer winds. More cover if I'm painted by radar. I'll deploy chaff pods, then cut altitude again if I take fire. Evasive maneuvering will keep me alive until extraction. The OV-10's engines can handle rapid throttle changes without flameout. I've trained for this exact stress load." Even Major Doyle's expression flickered. Arya spoke with the clarity of someone who had rehearsed the mission in her head 100 times before it ever existed. Reeves' nod was slow, deliberate. He turned to Stroud, who had folded his arms but no longer scowled. Around them, murmurs had shifted less dismissal, more respect. Skeptics began to realize Ghost Falcon wasn't just talk. She had a plan. Reeves broke the silence. "Lieutenant Chen, you may be the only one who sees this mission as possible." The tension in the room coiled tighter. Arya's pulse thundered, but her voice was steady. "Then let me prove it." Reeves glanced at Stroud, then back at her. His words landed like a hammer. "You'll have 90 minutes to prepare. If you fail, we lose 5 Americans and hand the enemy their secrets." The room buzzed with disbelief. Some officers shook their heads, others exchanged worried glances. Arya simply nodded once, her jaw set. For the first time, the Ghost Falcon had been unleashed. But outside, storm clouds gathered over the Iron Veil Range, promising that even the best plan could unravel in the teeth of the mountains. Her the mission as storms roll in. The decision was final. "Lieutenant Chen," Reeves said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You have the mission. Wheels up in 90 minutes. Whispers rippled across the hall. Some shook their heads, certain she wouldn't come back. Others stared with reluctant awe. Arya didn't waste a heartbeat. 90 minutes was nothing. Preparation blurred into instinct. On the flight line, Chief Engineer Maya Alvarez already had the Bronco stripped to its bones, auxiliary panels gone. Unnecessary weight removed. Every kilo mattered. Efficiency was survival. Specialized comms and navigation gear flickered inside the cockpit, tuned for deep penetration through hostile skies. Maya shoved a clipboard at her. Engines check out, fuel recalculated, emergency stores packed light, one chance. Chen, don't break her. Arya scanned the numbers, then looked up. If she breaks, it's on me. Maya's eyes softened for just a second before she gave a tight nod. Trust sealed in silence. Inside the command room, intelligence officers spread satellite photos and fresh intercepts. Red X's marked ridgelines, ZU-23 gun nests, Igla launch sites, enemy patrol corridors. Reeves leaned over the map, scarred finger tracing the valley floor. We'll move our SEALs along this ridge. You stay low, stay quiet. Feed us every position the moment they know you're there. It's over. Understood. Arya's reply was calm, almost defiant. Reeves studied her expression, searching for hesitation, finding none. He moved on. Colonel Victor Stroud entered last, his presence changing the air. Hours earlier, he doubted her. Now his tone carried something heavier. Lieutenant Chen, you carry this base on your wings. You will not fly alone. Every soul here is with you, for the first time. Respect burned in his eyes. Outside, the horizon blackened. Storm clouds clawed over the Iron Veil Range, lightning flashing against the peaks. Weather reports warned of low ceilings, crosswinds, and afternoon storms. Arya marked alternate corridors, sketched emergency landing sites, rehearsed contingencies. If the skies betrayed her, she would fight the storm as fiercely as the enemy. As launch time closed in, she followed her ritual. Emergency procedures once more, survival gear checked, flight suit sealed, buckles cinched, nothing left but focus. The Bronco waited under floodlights, shark nose profile gleaming like a predator eager to be unleashed. Ground crews lined the path in silence. They'd watched countless pilots head out. But this felt different. The mission's impossibility hung over them like a weight. Yet Arya's steady steps, her unhurried climb into the cockpit, spoke louder than speeches. She was ready. The canopy sealed her in steel and glass. She moved through the checklist with surgical precision switches. Gauges, throttle tests, thousands of repetitions turned instinct. Routine dulled fear, sharpened focus. The Bronco's twin engines coughed, then thundered awake. Vibration rolled through her chest. Modified handling tugged at the controls. But Arya adjusted seamlessly. She had rehearsed every anomaly. This bird was hers. Colonel Stroud stepped forward on the tarmac, delivering a crisp salute. Not protocol respect. Faces glowed in engine light mechanics. Marines, sailors, some anxious, others inspired, all knew they were witnessing a story that would be retold if she returned. Arya guided the Bronco to the taxiway. Reeves stood at the tower, headset pressed tight, his eyes locking with hers across the distance. A vow passed between soldier and pilot. Bring them home. She lined up on the runway, brakes locked, hands steady, one deep breath. 5 lives waited for her beyond the mountains. She shoved the throttle forward. The Bronco roared, surging down the strip. The world narrowed to speed. Vibration and faith. The nose lifted, wheels left Earth. Falcon Ridge fell away, swallowed by storm clouds and the black teeth of the Iron Veil Range ahead. And as she banked east into hostile skies, Arya Chen understood her true test hadn't even begun. The OV-10 Bronco skimmed the treetops, a shadow among shadows. Lieutenant Arya Chen gripped the stick, nerves alive, eyes darting between gauges and terrain. Below, the Iron Veil Range stretched into a maze of jagged ridges and hidden valleys, each one capable of hiding anti-aircraft fire. Radio chatter was fractured, static slicing through the lines. She kept her voice calm, coded, professional. Ghost Falcon. Pushing through Corridor Bravo, visibility poor. Holding altitude 150 feet. A burst of tracers split the mist. Red fire tearing past her canopy. Aria banked hard. Bronco engine screaming as she forced the aircraft into a near-impossible turn. G-forces crushed her into the seat, but she held steady. Training took over. She jinked, climbed, dropped again. Her hands flowing across the controls like a pianist mid-performance. The ZU-23 battery lost its lock. She escaped barely. The fuel gauge dropped another notch. She had little margin left. Then static cracked into a human voice. Weak, broken, but alive. This is Raven 3, Survivors 5. We see ridge with burned trees. We're here. Aria felt the surge in her chest. She keyed the mic, her voice steady copy. Raven 3, hold position. Help is coming. Moments later, the wreckage glinted beneath her twisted Black Hawk steel in a clearing too narrow for any rescue bird to land. She circled low. Sensors scanning. Eyes hunting. Enemy positions lit up on her scopes. She relayed everything to Reeves on the ground machine gun nests here. Man-pads launchers there. Patrols moving in from the east. Reeves's voice came back through the headset. Guiding in. Your eyes, our boots. Don't leave us blind. She became their lifeline. Every movement she called out gave the SEAL team another chance to live. Twice she spotted ambush positions the ground intel had missed. Twice she saved them from walking into death. Then came the thunder. Enemy ME-24, Hines churned toward the crash site, rotors beating the sky. Aria clenched her teeth. The Bronco wasn't built for dogfights, but she knew the terrain better than they did, using the ridgelines like armor. She darted low, broadcasting false radar pings to draw their sensors away. She bought Reeves and his men the window they needed. On the ground. 5 battered survivors were pulled from hiding, injured but breathing. Saved. But time was gone. Fuel warning lights glared. Clouds thickened, crosswinds kicked. She had to make the run back or risk never leaving Iron Vale. Rescue secured. Extraction underway. Ghost Falcon. You're clear. Reeves called. Aria banked toward home, coaxing the Bronco through the mountains, every muscle burning with exhaustion. The storm lashed the wings. Fuel dwindled to fumes, yet her hand stayed calm. One ridge, then another. Finally, Falcon Ridge radar painted her signal. Base control, Ghost Falcon inbound, low fuel, but intact. Cheers erupted over comms. On the tarmac, crews and commanders held their breath as her silhouette broke through the clouds. She touched down smooth, even as her tanks ran nearly dry. When the Bronco rolled to a stop, silence broke into thunderous applause. Reeves met her at the ladder. No words, just a salute, sharp and heavy with respect. Colonel Stroud followed. His skepticism washed away. You didn't just fly a mission, Lieutenant, he said quietly. You wrote a legend. That night, Aria sat alone in her quarters, a letter resting on her bunk. It was from the family of one of the rescued men because of you. My children still have a father. We owe you more than we can ever repay. She folded the paper gently, for all the fuel calculations, evasive maneuvers, and split-second decisions. This was the only reward that mattered, because, in the end, Aria Chen had proven something larger than herself. That courage has no gender, that quiet resolve can move mountains, that the bravest warriors aren't always the loudest, but the ones who rise when no one else will, and when the world asked. Is there a combat pilot here? The Ghost Falcon answered. True heroism isn't about noise or recognition. It's about answering the call, even when no one believes you can. Mission complete. Subscribe to Stories Unseen for more untold military stories, and report in. Drop your city below. Our unit salutes you.